Mount Zion. Our Lamb stood on the Mount Zion. Our Lamb stood on the Mount Zion.
Whoever remains ignorant, a creature of oblivion, cannot experience fulfillment. Remember, we have taught you that ignorance is the ignoring of the law. Even if you have heard and known the law, if you ignore its practice, you are ignorant. You are devoid of its presence here in your chakras, here in your temples. Do not mistake your intellectual knowledge of the letter of the Ascended Master's teaching for its full expression in you. Remember, I have told you this, you will become just like the Orthodox Christians. You will say, we know the letter, but you have not the example of the inner fire. And then this religion will die, just as Jesus' original mission died effectively in Christianity. It is a tremendous responsibility to carry a living teaching, a living word, a living sacred fire. It is all-consuming. We have to desire to be devoured by the fire of the teaching and to devour it. We are being devoured by the fire as we are devouring the fire, and we cannot rest in sluggishness and forget that it's the daily reinfusion of the whole planet with what you know that counts, and the transfer from your heart to people whom you meet. Be mindful, whoever you meet, give them a teaching, and don't be concerned if they point to you as a fool for Christ. Be a fool for Christ, but don't withhold the teaching and say, oh, that person cannot accept the teaching, I will be silent. Silence is also ignorance of the law of that Christhood. Remember, every moment you are the Christ, going after the one lost sheep. Remember this, it is your calling. It is indeed your calling. Do not miss the opportunities. The Gnostics said that he who remains ignorant dwells in deficiency. You know how it is when we know the teachings of good health and what to do with our lives, and we do not apply it. We remain in deficiency. We are worse off than those who know it not, because we know it and do not apply it, and we cut off our path of initiation at that moment. We can't go forward. It's like we're overloaded. We're sending a message to the universe. I know too much truth. How can I bring it all together in my life? I can't do it. So truth gets backed up. Just like on the freeway, it's backed up. It can't get inside of you. And pretty soon the angels will go to another. The Gnostic gospel of truth says, as with someone's ignorance, when he comes to have knowledge, his ignorance vanishes by itself. That is the power of knowledge. It is a candle, and it is a sacred fire that consumes. So we don't really have to get rid of ignorance. And if we don't have to get rid of it, we realize that it was never really real. We just allowed it to occupy the space of our minds, like a vacancy, like a void. And as soon as we put knowledge there, we knew. And because we knew, we could say, therefore I am. And then we take it from there. As the darkness vanishes when light appears, so also the deficiency vanishes in the fulfillment. For the Gnostic, gnosis, as self-knowledge and knowledge of God, brings redemption, not from sin, from ignorance. We could say ignorance is the only sin, Ignorance is the only sin and the only cause of suffering, coupled with the failure to undo that ignorance. The book of Thomas the Contender quotes Jesus as saying, "Whoever has not known himself has known nothing, but he who has known himself has at the same time already achieved knowledge about the depths of all things." In the Gospel of Thomas, Jesus says, "If you bring forth what is within you, what you bring forth will save you." He is speaking of the causal body and the great light of Christ. He is speaking of the electronic belt and the subconscious. If you do not bring forth what is within you, what you do not bring forth will destroy you. If you do not know that you have a demon of anger that periodically erupts to destroy your loved ones and yourself, if you will not face that the cause is within you, if you will not stop blaming others for your getting out of hand and being obnoxious, that thing will destroy you, and no one can deliver you from it but yourself. You must bring out of the subconscious what lurks there. It trips you in moments of unawareness. You stumble over it, and it is always involved in some circumstance, some outer happening, some relationship, and you point the finger and you blame it on someone else. What you do not bring forth in self-knowledge of the lower nature inside of you, hereditary problems, problems of psychology with your parents, if you do not look at these things, they can destroy your soul on the path. Believe me, I have seen it. And if you do not bring forth the power of your I am presence, in the absence of that power, you will be destroyed because you will not have the power to overcome what is coming out of the lower nature. Like it or not, karma is descending upon you every day. Like it or not, the dweller on the threshold of your carnal mind will appear to challenge your Christhood. Now, if you know who he is and what he is ahead of time, you will not fail your tests. That's why we give you the album, The ABCs of Your Psychology on the Cosmic Clock, so you can begin to observe without self-condemnation or the sense of being a sinner. What are the lesser untransmuted things that are there to get in your way, and what is the real virtue and power of God that you have already externalized in previous lives that you must now bring forth, because these are your armor, your weapons, your defense. It's the virtues and good deeds stored in your causal body. If you bring forth what is within you, what you bring forth will save you. If you do not bring forth what is within you, what you do not bring forth will destroy you. This needs to become the motto of the working, striving disciple, the Chela, who is not satisfied with who he was yesterday. Today is a new day of being not only God, but more of God, expanding, multiplying, some 100-fold, some 60-fold, some 30-fold. Each one of us decides our capacity to multiply God where we are. The universe demands an increase. The gifts of God given to you must be returned with interest. That is the law. He who ceases to progress ceases to be. The Gnostic term gnosis is parallel to the Buddhist concept of bodhi, which is enlightenment or supreme knowledge. This state, explains Peter Slatter, is the condition of our release from a seemingly endless spiral of fears, cravings, immature attachments, and distorted perceptions of who we really are and where our true happiness lies. Thus, enlightenment is freedom from what Gautama preached were the causes of suffering, desire or attachment to the world, to the self, the lower self, so as to make oneself liable to suffering. We have become attached to our lesser desires because we have thought them to be ourself, and we have not come to realize they are not the real self. And you cannot avoid that issue in your life if you are to move forward. Helena Roerich explains in her book, Foundations of Buddhism, that the source and the primary cause of all human sufferings lie in obscurity and ignorance, that somehow unknowing area that we do not probe or penetrate. From this issue Gautama's definitions and condemnations precisely of ignorance. He affirmed that ignorance is the greatest crime because it is the cause of all human sufferings, compelling us to value that which is unworthy of being valued, to suffer where there should be no suffering, to take the illusion for the reality. When you know a portion of reality and you see a friend who is accepting illusion as reality, it burdens your heart. You try to help that one, and when they cannot be helped because they cannot perceive beyond the illusion, you pity their plight and you think that such individuals are above all people most miserable. And therefore you come to the place of Buddha and Christ to solve the problem of how to deliver people from their illusions when they do not even desire to be delivered from those illusions. I'll leave that to the Master who will speak today to tell you the answer. Thus these spend their lives pursuing the insignificant, neglecting what in reality is the most precious, knowledge of the mystery of human existence and destiny. For the Gnostic, writes Pagels, self-ignorance is also a form of self-destruction. This is absolute truth. Our identity is the law. If we ignore it, it is tantamount to denying it. We destroy ourselves with our preference for ignorance because we are not growing in the multiplication of God by knowledge. According to the Gnostic text, Dialogue of the Savior, whoever does not understand the elements of the universe and of himself is bound for annihilation. That's pretty tough talk, isn't it? The characterization of Jesus by the Gnostics is, in many respects, closer to Eastern concepts than it is to the picture we receive of Jesus in the New Testament. Orthodox Jews and Christians insist that a chasm separates humanity from its Creator. God is wholly other. But some of the Gnostics who wrote these Gospels contradict this. Self-knowledge is knowledge of God. The self and the divine are identical. When you know this, you are said to have gnosis. You don't know gnosis, you have gnosis. When you know that the self and the divine are identical, you have gnosis. This means you have become it. So be careful with your use of the word gnosis and claiming it. He who claims to have it must be it. We have always told you that what you have not become, you do not in truth know, and you will not take it with you in the hour of transition. The living Jesus of these texts speaks of illusion and enlightenment, not of sin and repentance, like the Jesus of the New Testament. Instead of coming to save us from sin, he comes as a guide who opens access to spiritual understanding. But when the disciple attains enlightenment, Jesus no longer serves as his spiritual master. The two have become equal, even identical. According to the Gnostic texts, Jesus told his disciples, "When you see as I see and you know as I know, you have become as I am." Equal, twin. Thomas had it. Orthodox Christians believe that Jesus is Lord and Son of God in a unique way. He remains forever distinct from the rest of humanity whom he came to save. Yet the Gnostic Gospel of Thomas relates that as soon as Thomas recognizes him, Jesus says to Thomas that they have both received their being from the same source. the mighty I am presence. That's my interjection there. Jesus said, I am not your master. Because you have drunk, you have become drunk from the bubbling stream which I have measured out. He who will drink from my mouth, the power of my throat chakra, which is the living word, he who will drink from my mouth will become as I am. I myself shall become he, and the things that are hidden will be revealed to him. Quote from the Gospel of Thomas, not included in the Bible of today because it was considered heretical. This is the lost teaching of Jesus that you can go to all the world and proclaim because you are realizing it. Gautama Buddha has been described in much the same way. In his book, The Three Jewels, Sangharakshita says, though he is not regarded by his followers either as prophet or incarnation of God, from him as the perfectly enlightened and boundlessly compassionate teacher of all sentient beings proceeds the unique message of the path of enlightenment. Both Gnostic religions and Buddhism share the common theme of the attainment of Christhood or Buddhahood by the disciple. Mahayana Buddhism teaches that all sentient beings have the Buddha nature or the potential to become a Buddha. One Buddhist Shastra, which is a discourse on the sutra, says, because the Buddha cognition is contained in the mass of beings, because it is immaculate and non-dual by nature, because those who belong to the Buddha's lineage go towards it as their reward, therefore all animate beings have the germ of Buddhahood in them. The body of the perfect Buddha irradiates everything. Its suchness is undifferentiated, and the road to Buddhahood is open to all. At all times have all living beings the germ of Buddhahood in them. Buddha and Buddhahood should be seen by you as your mighty I am presence with concentric rings of light. This germ is indeed a germ and more. It is the great causal body above you. At all times you have the potential for Buddhahood. Enlightenment, gnosis. In the Gospel of Philip, one of the Nag Hammadi texts, we read, you saw the Spirit, you became Spirit. You saw Christ, you became Christ. You saw the Father, you shall become Father. You see yourself, and what you see, you shall become. Whoever achieves gnosis is no longer a Christian, but a Christ. One Gnostic teacher by the name of Monoimus said, look for God by taking yourself as the starting point. Learn who it is within you who makes everything his own and says, my God, my mind, my thought, my soul, my body. Learn the sources of sorrow, joy, love, hate. If you carefully investigate these matters, you will find him in yourself. I would explain to you that you also find God in your hatred because you discover that hatred is the misqualification of God as love. You move from the antithesis back to the thesis. When you examine your karma and you experience the suffering of it, you discover God in the right way you should have done things in the beginning. So by the positive and the negatives, all roads lead back to God as long as you observe without the sense of anger against God, for making you or your life in the circumstance in which you are. If you are to look to God within, you must look to that God within as the co-creator, the manifestation of him as co-creator, and that you, in a lesser God awareness, created all those things that now bind you and surround you. So you observe God as the law of karma, as the law in your being, which when you work with it, you can conquer the lesser self and see the fullness of God as he really is. Gautama, like some of the Gnostics, chose to remain outside existing orthodox structures and authority. As Gautama rejected the Brahmins, the Gnostics rejected the bishops and deacons. In the Apocalypse of Peter, Jesus prophesies to his disciple, "And there shall be others of those who are outside our number, who name themselves bishop and also deacons, as if they have received their authority from God. They bend themselves under the judgment of the leaders. These people are dry canals. They compromise themselves for fear of the powers that be. They preach a religion that satisfies the fallen angels, the power elite and the super rich. That is what Christianity today boils down to, the compromise of the false pastors." Gautama advocated reliance on the self. Do not accept what you hear by report. Do not accept tradition. Do not accept a statement because it is found in our books, nor because it is in accord with your belief, nor because it is the saying of your teacher. Be ye lamps unto yourselves. Those who either now or after I am dead shall rely upon themselves only and not look for assistance to anyone beside themselves. It is they who shall reach the very topmost height. Now, when speaking of the self here, that reliance is upon the real self and the I am presence. And this teaching of Gautama has been confused, and therefore people have thought the self was the intellect or the mind that did not have true gnosis, and they have gone out of the way and utterly confused the teachings of Gautama, even as they confuse the teachings of Jesus. Throughout the Gnostic Gospels, there runs the same theme of the Master urging his disciples on to self-discovery. The Gospel of Thomas records that Jesus' disciples said to him, "Show us the place where you are, since it is necessary for us to seek it." Instead of directing them to a place, Jesus answers, "Whoever has ears, let him hear. There is light within a man of light, and it lights up the whole world. If he does not shine, he is darkness." The Gospel of Truth, speaking of Jesus, says, "He is the shepherd who left behind the 99 sheep, which were not lost. He went searching for the one which was lost. Even on the Sabbath he labored for the sheep, which he found fallen into the pit. He gave life to the sheep. He transferred the light of his sacred heart and threefold flame, having brought it up from the pit, in order that you might know interiorly, you, the sons of interior knowledge, you, the keepers of the flame, the inheritors of this tradition. What is the Sabbath? The seventh day, on which it is not fitting for salvation to be idle. The Sabbath, or the seventh day, is upon us as the Aquarian age. We are in the seventh dispensation, and this is the Sabbath, when it is not fitting for the path or the knowledge of salvation or its teachers to be idle, in order that you may speak from the day from above, You speak from the day from above. You speak out of your I am presence when you speak, which has no night, and from the light which does not sink, because it is perfect. Say then from the heart that you are the perfect day, and in you dwells the light that does not fail. This then is Jesus' message to you. Say it. I am the perfect day. In me dwells the light that does not fail. I am the perfect day, and in me dwells the light that does not fail. I am the perfect day, and in me dwells the light that does not fail. Thank you, beloved. That is the conclusion of my message.